We call this workshop the Think Again Workshop. Our goal is to make a difference in the way people live by making a difference in the way people think.
This workshop is designed to give you the tools to make a difference and to affect the culture right within your own sphere of influence and beyond. The reason this workshop is effective is because it deals with underlying thoughts that determine behavior that shape the culture.
In session 1, we're going to deal with 5 file folders in everybody's mind.
Now, assumptions are the givens, the things we just take for granted, and they get the least examination. But we must examine them. Why? Because, like the gears of an engine, our outward actions are connected to underlying assumptions. Therefore, we must examine assumptions because this is where decisions start. This is where actions germinate.
Let's identify 2 premises here. First of all, values shape behavior. Take a look on page 6 in your participant guide. You will see 3 concentric circles there. And we'd like you to write the word behavior in the outer circle. Behavior is what is said or done by you or other people. It's also what's not said and what's not done. Next, we'd like you to write in the word values. Our point here is that behavior comes out of values. It doesn't come out of a vacuum. But behind values is something even more critical. We'd like you to write in the word worldview in the center circle. And this brings us to premise number 2, and that is, we must go beyond values to the worldviews that shape and govern our values.
Question number 1, who or what is my ultimate authority? Again, that's who or what is my ultimate authority? The second question, what comprises reality? What comprises reality? Number 3, who am I? How did I get here and what happens after I die? Who am I? How did I get here? And what happens when I die? Number 4, how do I determine right and wrong? Again, how do I determine right and wrong? And number 5, is there a reason and a purpose for my existence? Is there a reason and a purpose for my existence? Whatever people believe or assume to be true in these 5 areas will form their worldview, which will shape their values, which will guide their behavior.
He's saying, take care what ideas you embrace. Consider the source. Beware of the traditions of men. Now, Paul is not saying that all philosophy is necessarily bad. Just philosophy that's not according to Christ is his concern. Philosophy that's according to men. Paul is not saying that we shouldn't think. In fact, he's saying just the opposite. He is in essence telling us to think very carefully and think critically. Paul did not want the early Christians to be passive when it came to thinking skills. In 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5, he says this, "Take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ." Now, Colossians 2:8 is a defensive thinking skill. Watch out, take care, beware, lest you be taken captive. But 2 Corinthians 10:5 is an offensive thinking skill. That's where we are on the offense, taking thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. We need both skills. In Colossians and in 2 Corinthians, Paul presents 2 alternatives with respect to thoughts. He says either we can be taken captive by thoughts or we can take thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. I don't know about you, but I'd rather take thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ than to be taken captive by vain philosophy.
The question is, how do we take thoughts captive? Taking thoughts captive is a deliberative, learned skill. That is what this workshop is about.
Fortunately, the larger whole, the big picture of reality, is usually unspoken and presupposed. You don't hear it referred to in the evening news. Now we have a word for the big picture of reality, the larger frame of reference, and the word is, you guessed it, worldview. Here's our working definition of worldview. These 5 file folders provide a big picture of reality that actually causes us to see things in certain ways. I'll give you an example from Eastern thought and then one from Western thought. Let's say that you have a worldview that incorporates a belief in reincarnation and karma. Now these beliefs go hand in glove. You see, karma has to do with reaping the consequences of your behavior in this life in the next. For example, if you have good behavior in this life, you'll have good consequences in the next. If you have bad behavior in this life, in your next life, you'll have bad consequences. Recently, we heard a lecture by Vishal Mangalwadi, who is one of India's foremost Christian thinkers. He brought out the fact that the word karma actually means duty. And if you cause someone to suffer in your lifetime, then in your next life, you will have a duty to experience suffering yourself. So, if people around you are suffering, you actually do them a great disservice if you relieve their pain. You see, it's their duty to suffer. And if you ameliorate their pain in this life, they will only have to suffer more in the next life to pay their full duty. Now let me give you a Western example of the effects of one's worldview. I'm going to share with you 5 tenets of the worldview